Okay, I'm going to speak of few random points. Now, however you must try to justify the United Nations is a fraud by creating a colony in West Asia. So, I'm repeating again, you cannot trust the United Nations. You might have to deal with it, but you can't. I mean, the United Nations is a fraud, okay? It's a fraud by looking at this colony, because Muhammad Gaddafi said, if you don't protect the Palestinians, it's going to affect the entire region. So what he has said about the United Nations is true, completely true. If United Nations creates a colony, and it has been instrumental in creating a colony, it's a fraud, right? Whatever you say. Okay. Now, other thing I want to talk about this Pakistan. Pakistan had some conflict with Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan has good relationships with China, right? So when Pakistan politicians went to America, they started this conflict. And George Galloway, right, who has this social media outlet, and he was in British Parliament for about 50 years. He says whenever a politician goes to America, or when politicians come to America, then a war starts. Now Pakistan has had good relations with the Chinese. I think this conflict with Afghanistan is devastating for the Pakistanis, because China probably will not forgive you. So this is a wrong policy, right? Okay. I think you have made a strategic mistake, and there is a possibility that Indians will benefit from that too, because now why didn't China? Okay, again I am going to random thing. Why didn't China challenge the USA for the last 2 or 3 years? They didn't challenge. My understanding is that they didn't have access to helium. Helium is needed to do very low temperature physics, like 4.2 Kelvin or even less. You have helium-3 and helium-4. Helium, as I can remember, helium-3 has even lower boiling point. Okay? So I think the Chinese, now I have changed my view on economics. First I said about entropic capital. That is there, but it's not only entropic capital which is important. It is just, you have to make sure that your supply side is intact. So without the supply side, if you have any entropic capital, you don't have access to that, then your economy doesn't work. So I have changed my views little bit. My core views are there, but if you want to be really economically independent, you have to have the supply side. It can be from inside, or it can be within your country from outside. But if you take it from outside, it is not very sustainable. Okay, that's my view. So when you look at the last few months, 3 or 4 months, I changed a little bit on my economic thinking. Okay, so actually if you take the relationship between Canada and America, Canada is the senior partner, if you want to call it that way. So Canada is losing employment, right? It is not a negative sign. Temporarily it is a negative sign. So when you fight with the more giant neighbor, you are going to lose. It will be a hard struggle. It will be simple. So losing employment temporary, it might be a good indicator, right? Without a struggle, you can't win. Now, the Western nations have no moral standing. Okay? If you don't stop the genocide, after that you can't talk of your economy or anything like that. So you have to fight against the genocide, and that you will have to pay enormous price. Right? If you take all the Western nations, if you take most of the Western nations, financial side is very top heavy. So my gut feeling is you can relate physics to economics, but I think it is more related to biology. So in the biology you have this energy pyramid. You have the primary producers at the top and the predators at the bottom. Primary producers at the bottom, first layer, and predators at the top. So if your financial sector is very heavy, that means you are not sustainable. Whatever this Nobel Prize winners in economics say. So most of the Western economics are not sustainable because the financial side is heavy. That means your predator side is heavy. That means you can't run that economy, right? So Canada may have to go for a gold-based currency. It might be difficult. So it's like this. Donald Trump has done a great favor to Canada by harassing it. I think the Canadians have matured. It's like you kick a puppy. You kick a puppy 3 or 4 times. Then after 3 or 4 times, the puppy will bite your ankle or leg of your foot. That is, I think Donald Trump has done great favor to Canada because Canada is not the junior partner in economics. As far as entropy is concerned, as far as entropy capital is concerned, as far as exploitation is concerned, Canada is the senior partner. Canada is not the junior partner. I think Canada has grown up. That means you are going to suffer for some period if you want to get to economics because you can't fight the Americans. It will be. So Canada has to go for a gold-based currency. It will be difficult, very difficult. But Canada can join BRICS. Okay? Canada can flip. So I think the most of these Western countries should try to restrict their financial system, right? So my training is in physics, but I think biology resembles economics more than physics. You can use physics because the energy system is there. So when you come to biology again, you have that energy there. So you can't divorce physics from biology. But if you want to take a model, then biology is more physical. When you take physics, it is more abstract. So you have to restrict. Key to sustainability is you have to restrict the financial sector because financial sector represents the predator level. I would not use the word predator. I think it is more like a parasite. So Canada can break away from the system if Canada is to have their head high. It has to fight against genocide. Okay, if the Western countries are promoting genocide, you are morally lost. Because if you take the Houthis are very poor materially. According to Norman Finkelstein, he says Houthis are the most moral force in the world, and that is why they can stand up to. Of course, there are some. If you take the women in Yemen, there are some problems. I mean I'm not denying that, but that's a secondary issue. And if you take this Iran and UN colony, I would not name the country anymore. I would say it's a UN colony. It is a UN colony. because I want to put UN also in their correct place. UN can't dominate anymore to the south. We have suffered until now. If you go to the China, okay, I am just going into another random thing. When I get something in my mind, China had at least 13 dynasties. If you take the small dynasties, China had about 60 to 70 dynasties. So you can't understand Chinese history properly. But China has one goal, that is, China always calls this 100 years of humiliation. So Chinese will never surrender to any country. Even if they die of starvation, they will not surrender to the West. And China will always fight back. I think China has secured all the supply lines. So in economics, what is dominant in entropic capital, what I would label as entropic capital, and the supply line costs that will. And they had this problem with helium. Without helium, you can't have frontiers in physics. That is, you can't do low temperature physics without helium. I think they secured that. And they have developed a lot of technologies in helium. So that is physics. That is more towards physics. And I think now they are challenging the West. So this is an epic battle. If the West, country in the West wants to shine, they have to fight against genocide. When you fight against genocide, you are going to suffer. Right? Your employment will go down. But that is, you have to bear it. I think it is, in a way, it is some of the countries in the Western camp who suffers most. Because the Americans need their entropic capital. The Americans will try to extract their entropic capital by any means. So that means if you unless you confront America, so Canada has to stop this policy of ostrich in tar sand, okay? And you have to control the financial sector, because financial sector is the predator level, but I would use the word parasitic. That is the key to get more sustain. It will be a lot of suffering when you go into that area. So I touched upon few subjects. I said I think the Pakistanis had made a strategic blunder going into this conflict in Afghanistan, and I think if Pakistan is to get back, they have to have some compromise with this Imran Khan, because Imran Khan was little bit against the Americans. He showed certain policies of it may be wrong, and that's the reason why he went to jail. Okay, so I think Pakistan has hurt the Chinese, and Pakistan is going to suffer a lot. And if you are in the south, you have to join the Chinese, because Chinese policy is to avoid this no more 100 years or not even 100 days of humiliation. Right? If you want to really study the Chinese, you have to study their history, but that's it will take you a whole lifetime. Right? But there is a small point where you can get the Chinese, what the Chinese are doing. Right? So Chinese will give the leadership. So I don't like Chinese dominating, but if you get rid of these reserve currencies, whole world will benefit from that. The world has to get to restrict the financial sector, because that is financial sector is the predator at the top. Okay? So I talked about China. I think Canada is the key to a sustainable economy. Right? And Canada has to thank Donald Trump for kicking them around. I think Canada has become mature. Okay? So you have to get rid of this ostrich in the tar sand policy, and you have to go for more sustainable. And I think Canada can, but you are going to suffer. If you are going to challenge America, you are going to suffer. But you will come up on top, and you have to stop the genocide. If you are from the Western country, you have to stop the genocide.